Hallo, met Roesiker hier. Vandaag wil ik het hebben over meerdere dingen. Ja, dit verhaal gaat over hoe de wereld eruit zag voor Genesis vers 1, onze Bijbel. Het tweede filmpje gaat over de Lady of Mali, wat mooi aansluit op het eerste filmpje. Het derde filmpje gaat over dat er heel veel piramides zijn gevonden in de wereld. Het vierde filmpje gaat over Antarctica. Er zijn ook ruïnes gevonden en vreemde dingen. En ik heb een plaatje over een barakkenskul, wat ook zeer interessant is. Dat laat ik nou even zien. Ik ga het filmpje starten.
Thank you very much. Always happy to be here with you. It so happens that I have a subject that I've been wanting to talk about, so it seems like this would be just as good a time as any. In the Bible, there are many things that are misunderstood and mistranslated into English that comes from what we call Hebrew. First of all, we need to understand that which we refer to as Hebrew is in point of fact not Hebrew, but Canaanite, Phoenician Canaanite. The bloodline is from the ancient Middle East called the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians, that area in which Phoenicia existed was called Cana, the land of Cana. So today we refer to the Canaanite, Phoenician Canaanite language as Hebrew. All you have to do is go to reference books and look up ancient Hebrew, and it will tell you ancient Hebrew is actually Phoenician Canaanite. And it develops and mutates and comes down through history until today we call it Hebrew. But Hebrew is actually a Phoenician language. And many of the concepts and ideas which are expressed in the Old Testament are not original to the Old Testament. It goes back to even further back into ancient history, so that many of the concepts and belief systems in Judaism and Christianity are very, very ancient. And I believe that the Bible is one of the most important books on the earth, because it's really telling you some really interesting things. But if you don't understand how to read the symbols, it's never going to dawn on you how this stuff works. I think the New Testament is probably the most important story in the whole world, but not as history, but as a metaphor, as an encoded message. But let me go back to this one subject that I've been very interested in for a long time, and that is, in the beginning of the Bible, in Genesis 1:1 says, in the King James Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But that's not what it says in the old ancient Hebrew or Phoenician language. That's not what it says in the original language. That's how it was translated from the English, in the King's English. Well, the King's English, the King James Version, was translated by the best translators that the king had at the time. And it was very well done. However, they know more about the language today than what they did then. And so there's a lot of imperfections in the King James Bible that could be misleading unless you understand what the words actually meant in the ancient world. And so when you read in the beginning, this is Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's not what it says in Hebrew. It says, in the beginning of the creation, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Elohim is not the word God. El is a Phoenician Canaanite name or word for deity, El, E-L. We talked a little bit about that last week. Elohim is like adding an S onto an English word. You have C-A-R for car, or C-A-R-S, cars, more than one. So adding an S on the end to the end of most English words means it's plural, in the plural. Well, that's exactly what Elohim means. El is God, Elohim is plural. So the correct understanding should be read, the Hebrew read, in the beginning, the gods created the heavens and the earth, not God. And more interesting than that, this is why, incidentally, in Genesis 1:28, when God is creating Adam and Eve, the first couple, when it says, God said, come, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Who's us and our? Was God talking to himself? Come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Later on in Genesis, I think it's 3, the scripture says, God said, here man has become as one of us, knowing good and evil. The point is, who is God talking about? Us. Here's man made in our image after looking like us. Here, now he's like us. Who's us? Who's our? Well, it's Elohim, the gods. So consequently, what we're talking about here is that the gods created us, created the heavens and the earth and all things on it. Now, more important to my, and this is the whole subject, of course, you could take this, in many different directions. But interesting, in Genesis 1:2 says, and the earth was without form and void. That's another mistranslation. In the original, it does not say that the earth was without form and void. Actually, it says, and the earth became a waste and a desolation. Not form and void, but waste and desolation. And it was not, as I said, the scripture, if you read it today in the Bible, Genesis 1:2, says, and the earth was without form and void. No. The earth became a waste and a desolation. Consequently, if you go to Genesis 9, which is Genesis 9:1, where God is talking to Noah after the flood of Noah's day, and God says to Noah, now, understanding that according to the story, everyone has been wiped off the earth in the great flood, and so God says to Noah and his sons, his 3 sons, go forth into the world now and multiply and replenish the earth. And you ask the question, wait a minute, the word is R-E, replenish the earth, meaning not plenish, replenish, meaning do it again. Why? Well, simply because before Noah, there was a whole civilization. God brings a flood, according to the story. God brings a flood, destroys the world and all life on it. And now God is saying to Noah and his sons and their wives, go now on the earth and reproduce and fill the earth and replenish the earth. Well, that is a correct translation from the Hebrew, and I've talked to rabbis about that. And the word is replenish, R-E, means do it again. Okay, it makes sense that God would be telling Noah to redo it again. However, if you go back to Genesis 1:28, where God is creating, the first chapter of the Bible, where God is creating man, and man and woman, Adam and Eve, he says to Adam and Eve, multiply and replenish the earth. Do it again, replenish the earth. Implying, of course, do it again. What are you talking about doing again? Well, if you just read Genesis 1:2 correctly, it said, and the earth was without form and void. No, the earth became a waste and a desolation. So the rabbis will tell you, and the rabbinical reference works will tell you, that what is being said in Genesis 1:2 and in 1:28, when man and woman are being created, is that God is recreating all over again. And so consequently, the Bible, the Old Testament, is a story for this dispensation. This time, the world is being recreated. Now, what happened a million years ago, 10,000 or 100,000 years ago, that's none of your business. For you right now, this is what you need to understand. And the bottom line is that we are not the first creatures on the earth, the first time man's been on the earth. We now know that man has been on the earth probably millions and millions of years, and that for us to think that mankind was created 6,000, 7,000, 10,000 years ago is ludicrous, because we know better than that. And so consequently, that's what the Bible is saying. God is saying, replenish the earth to Adam and Eve. Do it again. Who is God? Well, the scripture says, and this is a very difficult word to deal with, God, G-O-D, because that's a lot of baggage. What are you talking about when you talk about God? Well, God is dog spelled backwards, as I said. This is why churches have dogma in their teachings, because it goes back to Anubis the dog star, Anubis the dog, the god of and the ancient Egyptian religion. But when you look at the word, and now I get back to what I was going to say to start with, that in Genesis 1:2, where it incorrectly says and the earth was without form and void, no, the earth became a waste and a desolation. The two Hebrew words that are being translated there is tohu and vohu. Pronunciation, it would be T-O-E hyphen W-H-O, tohu. That's not the way it's spelled in Hebrew, but that's the way it's pronounced. T-O-E-W-H-O, tohu. Vohu would be V-O-E-W-H-O, tohu, vohu, waste, desolation. There's only two places in the Bible where tohu vohu is used, and those two places, they're always used together. And there's only two places to start with. One is in Jeremiah, and one is in Genesis 1:2. And in the scripture in Jeremiah says, I saw the earth in a vision, and the earth was tohu vohu, meaning the earth became, and my eyes, I saw the earth, and it became a waste and a desolation. Well, when did that happen? Well, according to the Jeremiah prophecy, it happened many, many, many thousands of years before. And the prophet Isaiah said God gave him a vision. And in the vision, he saw the earth and tohu vohu, which is the earth became in his eyes. It was beautiful. And the scripture says that. Jeremiah says, and the earth was beautiful. Its animals, its birds, its civilizations were absolutely beautiful to see. And then tohu vohu, it became a waste and a desolation, meaning that the earth probably was a very beautiful place thousands and thousands of years ago, maybe 100,000 years ago. And Jeremiah was given the opportunity to see the way the earth was 30, 40, 50,000 years ago, with animals and a whole different beautiful world. And then something happened, some kind of a major catastrophe, tohu vohu. It became a waste and a desolation. Now, when you go back to Genesis 1:2, tohu vohu is always understood to be a situation that the earth goes through when it changes from what the ancients call one dispensation to another dispensation, or one period of time in God's history, not our history, but in the history of the universal God force, the way it keeps time. And of course, it's, one day is 1,000 years. Well, that's probably more than that. Theoretically, using the term God, how does God keep time? Well, my Lord, God's forever, forever. So, how long would that be? So in the universal God force concept of time, millions of years are nothing. So consequently, what is being said there is that tohu vohu implies a total destruction on a cosmic level between dispensations of creation between God. Between the time that God created the earth and all these wonderful things were on it, say 100,000 years ago, and then when something happened, a comet hit the earth is one of the ideas that's going around now. A major comet the size of New York hit in the south of Mexico and caused the dust to fly all over the earth, and everything died because it blocked out the sun. I don't know, but but something happened, because we know that animals, even in the North Pole, the South Pole, they have found animals that are frozen solid with green vegetation still in their mouth. Consequently, something happened many, many, many thousands of years ago, which is translated tohu vohu. Some terrible catastrophe happened on the earth in which the gods were angry, and the whole thing was just leveled. Well, maybe it wasn't the gods who did it, but the point being is that the Bible is saying that the gods, Elohim, became angry at the creation, and Jeremiah was allowed to see tohu vohu, a total destruction all over the earth, a major catastrophe. And that is precisely, as I said, the words and the concept is used for the dispensation of one creative period going to another creative period. So when everything is collapsed and destroyed, now theoretically, according to the Bible, God says, come, let us do it again. All right, let's start all over again, and let's create a man and a woman. And Rabbi Marvin S. Antelman, some 35 years ago, Marvin Antelman, Antelmann, Marvin Antelman of Newton, Massachusetts, was 35 years ago president of the American Rabbinical Association. And he and I were very close friends for many years. I used to chide him all the time about his understanding of the Bible. But Rabbi Antelman, president of the American Rabbinical Association, said to me, I asked him about that scripture where God said, come, let us make man in our image after our likeness. And I said to Rabbi, what are you talking about? Come, let us. Who's us? Did God got to get permission from somebody else that's working with him, or what? And he says, no, it's a misunderstanding on how the sentence is understood by Gentiles and Jews. Jews also misunderstand. They don't know any more than the Gentiles do. There is a correct way to read that sentence. And the normal way people think that scripture is saying when it says God said, come, let us make man in our image after our likeness. Most people think that that's God is saying, come, let us create a creature. Let us make a new creation, a creature, and we will call him, maybe we'll call him man. So come, let us make a creature, and we will call him man and woman. Man with a womb, man. And that's what most people understand that scripture to mean. That's not what it says at all. Rabbi Antelman says, nowhere in the Bible does it say God created man. It doesn't say that. Go back and read it correctly. What is said is that God said, or Elohim, the gods said, come, let us make man in our image after our likeness. The correct way to understand that is the gods were saying, come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Not make man, man's already here. Come, let us remake man. Do it again. Let us make man according to our image and our likeness. And so the ancient Jews and the Hebrews and all the ancient civilizations, starting all the way back to Sumeria, understood what was being said. It's just that we don't understand, because all we get is our news from ABC. We wouldn't know anything about what's going on. But if you go back to the ancient works, you will find that the ancient people, the Sumerians, Babylonians, Phoenician Canaanites, Egyptians, the ancient Greeks and Romans, all of them understood that we are the creation of another entity. We are the creation of the gods. And according to Zechariah Sitchin, and he's not the only one, he's just one that I know personally, but according to the work of Zechariah Sitchin, the Sumerians are saying that extraterrestrials came here from a planet called Nibiru. And Nibiru is, according to the Sumerians, they said that Nibiru is a planet about twice the size of the Earth, and it is part of our solar system, but it has a huge elliptical orbit. It's not a round orbit, it's elliptical orbit, oblong. And consequently, according to the Sumerians, and now we're beginning to scientifically find out that he was right. The Sumerians are right. The U.S. Navy has even commented on now that there seems to be more than one other planet connected to our solar system with elliptical orbits. Well, that's what the Sumerians were saying. And consequently, this elliptical orbit is every 3,600 years, it comes back into our vicinity and passes through our solar system, then goes back out again. And according to the way the solar system turns in the galaxy, and this thing comes back every 3,600 years, comes back and then goes back out. And consequently, every 3,600 years, mankind seems to make massive movements on the earth, new things, new technology. All of a sudden, things just start happening. Why? I believe that there's at least enough evidence to show that there might be something to this story, that the Sumerians and the Egyptians and all these great civilizations, not us, we have no idea what's going on right here in our own city, but the ancient peoples knew and said that the gods told them that every 3,600 years they come back through. When they come back through, why travel a long distance when they could just wait? The planet's going to be in the close vicinity, and when it is, it'll be here for a few months. So they will drop off and see how everything is, and give you some new some new concepts and new ideas, depending on how smart you are. If you're still as dumb as last time they were here, why bother? But if you've progressed a little bit, they will give you a little bit more to work on. Then they get on the planet and leave, and another 3,600 years goes by, and mankind progresses again. So all of this makes some kind of a legitimate sense if you are able to look at science, philosophy, religion, biblical history, and be able to balance it all out. There is a modicum of truth in all of this, because scientifically things are being proven now that the Sumerians were saying many thousands of years ago. So the point being is that God said, "Come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Interesting. In relation to that, and again, I go back and reiterate that Rabbi Entelman said the correct way to say that, or to read that scripture, is that the gods said, "Come, let us make man in our image." Not make man, but let's make him in our image, after our likeness. Well, that's interesting. You mean we were already here, but for being so great, we weren't that great? Yeah, we were hominids. We were Neanderthal man. We were Cro-Magnon man. We were whatever these creatures were that were digging up all over the world. In the south of France, we're finding Neanderthal who stand upright, Homo sapien, but they were just a little different from us. But they had certain qualities that showed that they had some intelligence about how to do things. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, from the Neanderthal period, we pop in. Our skin and flesh is different than what the Neanderthals would have been. Our skin is thinner. We can't take the cold like animals do at 2 o'clock in the morning on the desert when it's 20 below zero. Animals are out there. They live through it. We couldn't. Why? It's because our bodies are designed differently. Our skin is thinner. Our systems are more balanced and vulnerable. However, our spirituality and our intellect is far higher. We can appreciate geometry, sciences, occultism, beautiful music, lasers. I mean, our intellectual and spiritual capacity is phenomenal. But our bodies are very vulnerable. So what happened in our natural evolution of things when one time you have the Neanderthals, or whatever these hominid creatures, and that's a word that science used, hominids, these creatures, and all of a sudden we appear? Well, it makes sense to me that perhaps there is something to what the Sumerians said, that the gods who came through on Nibiru, or whatever the planet was, or whatever the story is, the bottom line is that the gods said, "Come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness," meaning they must have crossbreeded their DNA with our DNA, whichever the normal hominid creatures that were here, take one of the females, impregnate the female with the genetics of the gods, and the outcome would have been us. We are still animalistic. I mean, at best, we're still animalistic. We're still going around killing people and shooting people, and anybody that doesn't look like us or happen to be our color, we hate them and we shoot them. We shoot our own families. You know, we shoot presidents. We shoot everybody. Why? It's because we are actually a Neanderthal, ancient hominid creature. And we have appetites for violence and excitement and killing and all that kind of thing. However, we also, as among us, those who are profoundly brilliant and spiritually in tune, who give us the great composers, the great poets, the greatness that mankind is capable of. So you have the balance, the animalistic human plus the divinely inspired. So we can, you know, we're balanced. The bottom line on this is that we are created by the gods. Now, go back to Genesis 18, and in Genesis 18, there's a story there about Abraham. And Abraham is standing in his tent talking to his wife, the scripture says. Go read it in the Bible, in Genesis 18. And it says, and Abraham was standing in his tent, and 3 men come walking up toward him. And he went out to meet them. And they talked with the men, and they said that they were on their way to some business they had elsewhere, and they were just passing through. And it says Abraham invited them to stay and have dinner at least, because this was a custom in the ancient world. If you have tourists or people coming through, it doesn't matter who they are, that was a custom in the ancient world. You show hospitality by asking them if at least you can stop and have something to eat or something, refresh yourself, and then go. And so that was the custom. You know, we still do that today. You know, friends drop over, you'll fix them something to eat or something. So that was a custom. But it's interesting that in Genesis 18, it says Abraham asked the 3 men to stay and have dinner and then go. And they said no, they were busy. They had something they had to do. And it said that Abraham insisted. So they said, all right, not going to argue. We'll have dinner, but make it quick because we've got something to do, but we'll stay for a few minutes. So it said Abraham had Sarah make something to eat. And after eating, 2 of the men got up, thanked Abraham for his hospitality, and said, but they really must go. But the 3rd one stayed to talk for a little bit. And then later on, and that's in Genesis 18, in the next chapter, Genesis 19, you find out that those 2 men are now the 2 men who are in Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis 19. And it says that when those 2 men who were, you know, the day before with Abraham are now in Sodom and Gomorrah, it said the homosexuals thought they were good-looking, handsome men. And it said that the homosexuals that night came to the house where these 2 men were staying with Lot and called them out, and the 2 men were able to supernaturally cause the people of the town to become blind so that they started fighting among themselves. And it says that the 2 men in the Bible, Genesis 19, were in point of fact actually angels, spirit entities who have come in a human form. And it says in Genesis 18 that the one that stayed and talked with Abraham was in fact the Lord God, the Creator himself. God Almighty, the Creator of mankind himself, was the Lord who sat with Abraham. And I think to myself, wait a minute. You mean Abraham actually fixed dinner for God, for the Creator, and he sat there and had dinner and a couple of drinks and chit-chatted with Abraham and talked to his wife. And he was said to be a man. He looked like a man. He acted like a man. Take that into consideration with later on in Genesis when it says the sons of God. And sons of God does not mean angels. Angels and sons of God are totally different subjects. Angels are not sons of God. But later on in Genesis, it says sons of God began to forsake their proper dwelling place and start cohabiting with women. the sons of God began to see women, that they were beautiful, and fell for the women. And this is where we get the idea of falling in love, because they fell from a higher position because of the women. And so consequently, I cannot picture myself seeing a woman being talked into bed by some hideous creature from another world, but good-looking, handsome men might do it. So consequently, it makes sense that the sons of God were good-looking, handsome men. Even homosexuals thought they were good-looking, handsome men. The point being is that the angels, the sons of God, not the angels, but the sons of God, there were two of them that accompanied the Almighty God, the Creator, Yahweh, Jehovah. And what is this all saying? The bottom line, after everything is said and done, is quite simply this, that we are told that God, the Creator, had two accompanying angels with him. He went into Sodom and Gomorrah. They looked like men. They sat down. They had dinner. They could chit-chat with you. And and two of them left to go, and they all looked like men. And later on, the sons of God, who looked like handsome, good-looking men, they started messing around with women and had offspring. Well, their plumbing must have worked if they had offspring through females. So they must have been, for all practical purposes, a man. What is this saying? It's basically saying this. I believe that there is a modicum of truth in the story that's encoded in the book of Genesis. I think there is something there very important. I think that today there very well could be sons of God still here on the earth. We don't know what their lifespan is. We don't know how long sons of God, Elohim, or the Anunnaki, as the ancient Sumerians called them, we don't know how long they live. We have no idea what we're talking about here. All we know is saying the Bible that there are extraterrestrials, and I have to tell you this, but that's the word, extraterrestrial, because God and the angels, or the sons of God, do not come from Van Nuys. They come from out there. They come from somewhere out there in, quote, heaven, end quote. So if they're coming from out there and they look like humans, and they can mess with women and have offspring, they can sit and have dinner with you, and they look like good and handsome men, but they're not from here, and they're not men. They just look like men. That begins to make sense to me that perhaps what we are seeing today in the Middle East, having to do with the Iraq, which Iraq was originally hundreds of years ago called Persia. Persia was called before that Chaldea. Chaldea before that was called Babylon. So what we're talking about is the king of Babylon. Now it begins to look like what's going on here is that our world is being run by very powerful men who cared nothing whatsoever about human creatures. Do you care and worry yourself sick when you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and think about how many innocent families were broken up, how many chickens had to die? You couldn't care less. They're just chickens. They're just animals. And so consequently, I think that the sons of God, the Elohim, Anunnaki, I don't care what name you give them, they are still here. I am totally convinced that we are now seeing in the Middle East, with the United States government doing what it's doing, with the rest of the world preparing for something, tohu vohu. What we're actually seeing is a profound, awesome, terrible tribulation coming when the gods are going to battle like two men fighting over a woman. The gods are going to battle for the ownership of us. And consequently, when you understand that Saddam Hussein is Persian, Persia is Chaldean, Chaldean is Babylon. And we're talked in the Bible is filled with, in the book of Genesis and all the way through to Revelation, talks about how the gods of Babylon were to be cursed, and they were evil, and that the good God was going to destroy Babylon. I think what we're seeing right now is in Israel, America, England, when you begin to look at the symbols, the words, the terms, the national coats of arms, the seals of nations, listen to what the president is saying, I am totally convinced for my own self, and I've been looking at this for over 40 years, I'm totally convinced what's going on right now is that the president of the United States has no control over anything. I think that what's going on is there are very powerful, awesome creatures on this earth that look like men and they act like men and they can eat with you, but they are not normal human beings. These people are despotically powerful, murderous in their intent. They don't care a thing about human life because they created it. They don't give a damn about nations, races, children, family values. That's all crap to them. They created this creature called man. They are in a whole different world than we are. They don't see the same things. Their technology is so far above us. Their understanding of human creation is so far above anything we understand. They are, as far as we're concerned, gods. Consequently, I think that what we're seeing now is a war between the gods, and consequently, tohu vohu. I believe that it's my opinion that we're going to see in the next 2.5 years trouble like we have never seen it before. It's frightening, the implications of what I just think back on the gods when they're at war. You like war and you like bloodshed. Well, stick around. Now you're going to see how the gods do it. You love America loves all these war movies. Good, stick around. You're going to really want to see this one because the gods are going to show you what war is really all about. And it hasn't got a thing to do with sparing the children and only dropping bombs on military. And no. The gods, they don't give a damn about none of it. They're here to do one thing, and that is control and take ownership of us, their creation. Incidentally, if the concept that I have outlined that we creatures, we humans, are actually the offspring of the gods, or some kind of a mating action between the extraterrestrials or the Elohim, Anunnaki, the ancient gods, whatever you want to call them, if there is something to this, if there is any validity to this concept that extraterrestrials who came from heaven, yeah, of course, if they came here and they said, come, let us create man or make man in our image and our likeness, you've got a very interesting situation here. You have Neanderthal or hominid creatures, and we haven't even discussed where the hominid creatures came from. We're not even dealing with that yet. But you're talking about an extraterrestrial life forms that look like us, and they have come here from another world, from another place in time, and they are attempting to procreate with the indigenous creatures that are here, and consequently their DNA and their system, their body system from where the world they have come from is so superior to ours, and yet they are smart enough to know how to blend our DNA, the creatures, the hominid creatures, with them. Is this how we got today the Yetis, abominable snowman, the Yetis? What are some of the other terms that are used for those creatures? What is it? Bigfoot. Yeah, Bigfoot, the Yetis, whatever. They are hominid creatures. They walk on two legs like male. They look like men, but they are animals. But they are brilliant in intelligence and can outsmart anybody. They have obviously supernatural powers to go in and out of dimensions. There's a lot of material on that subject. So, and too many races of people around the world, from China to Asia to North America to all of the ancient cultures, talk about the Bigfoot, the Yetis, those mysterious creatures that live in the wilds. It would not surprise me if those Yetis, Bigfoot creatures, are the original experiments of the Anunnaki gods cohabiting and crossbreeding with the hominid creatures that were here, but they put too much of something in and not enough of the other, and they came out even more vicious than what they were and even smarter. But they're still animals. Well, they screwed up. Okay, now we got to do it something better, because this thing was, before it was just an animal. Now it's a vicious animal, and it has supernatural powers like we do. So, all right, and that thing's already gone. Let's forget it. Let's move it on and do it again. Now, this time we're going to do it better, and so now they do it again, and now they got it right. Now they got it balanced and got the DNA correct and got it right and gave birth to us. So I'm saying, if any of this has any validity, and I'm just pointing this material out because this is what the Bible says. And so consequently, if any of this has any validity, it very well might be, as my friend William Henry has been talking about for many years, and Zechariah and all the rest of them. I think that we might be seeing a war being put together right now, not by men. It is very possible that we in this country and the world in general is being led. We have talked about Illuminati, the secret societies, the fraternal orders, even among the Masons of Europe. When you confront the Masons of Europe and you ask them, who actually is at the top of your organization? At the very top, who are they? They will tell you that they don't know. That is not to be discussed. They don't know who is at the top, and it's none of your business. And you want to stay alive and just do what you're doing, then you just take care of your business at this level and don't worry about who the boss is. And consequently, the Masons in Europe refer to their masters as, quote, the hidden chiefs or hidden masters. Somehow or another, the hidden masters behind world events, today we refer to them as Illuminati or whatever. I don't think the Bilderbergers and the Council on Foreign Relations and any of those organizations are of any importance to me at all. Those are just the mundane nuts and bolts of how the organizations put together to make things work. I'm more interested as to who are the gods behind world affairs. Who are the brilliant minds at the top of the pyramid, symbolically? Who are the intellectual elites behind world events? I'm totally sure there's only a handful. A very small, tiny handful, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they were the Elohim, the Anunnaki, the men who look like men, but are not men. Consequently, so many people have said, how can these people go to war, killing innocent women and children, like the First and Second World War, murdering and killing? How could men do this? I don't think men are doing it at all. I think that there are powerful entities in this world who look like men, and they give the orders, and you better jump. And I don't care if you call yourself president, it just don't matter. If you get in their way, they'd sooner kill you as anybody else. They got an agenda, and you had better jump when they say. And consequently, I think that's what we're looking at today, a war between the gods. It has not.
Ja, dit is heel interessant. We kunnen zien dat wij gecreëerd zijn door die reptilians. Het zijn gewoon wezens die op mensen lijken. Wij lijken op hun. Hè? Dus het is gewoon wat er in de Bijbel staat. Want laten wij mensen maken ons even op ons. Het is gewoon, heftig gewoon allemaal. Het heeft ook met het coronavirus te maken allemaal. Ze willen gewoon een agenda. Je kan er niks tegen doen. En nu gaan we naar het tweede filmpje. Even kijken hoor. Of ik hem kan pakken. Even kijken. Of het kan. Ja, hier. Ja. Dit gaat over de Lady of Mali. En het is eigenlijk een beeld. Ja, zie je het filmpje maar.
December 12th, 2017. What you are looking at here is the remarkable Lady of Mali. It's a giant ancient rock sculpture in Guinea, West Africa. And you could see this at a great distance away. She's truly remarkable. She's located 1,500 meters up in altitude on Mount Lore. And she's carved into the rock, and you have to wonder how this was done, as scientists have estimated that the dating of this is probably about 20,000 years ago. And here you can see some other pictures of her. Her face is 75 feet tall, and her body is about 450 feet long. And again, the estimation on the age of the sculpture goes back 20,000 years. Pretty amazing. How did people do this 20,000 years ago unless there was an advanced civilization on the planet? That's, can you imagine that the hunter-gatherers that were supposedly on that planet by modern, scientific thought would be able to do this or would want to do this? That just doesn't seem feasible. So again, she's located on a high rock wall over an abyss. And again, the head is about 25 meters high. The entire sculpture is about 150 meters high. Italian geologist Angelo Pittoni, a consultant on the acclimation of tropical plants and vegetables to Mediterranean climates for United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. He had succumbed to Lost Kingdom fever after performing his duties in the African Republic of Guinea. He was interested in, anything like as far as ancient civilizations, things along those lines. So when he heard about this, he was fascinated and had to go check it out for himself. And he saw this giant statue just in an unexpected location, and the locals always called it the Lady of Mali, M-A-L-I. And it's located to the north of the city of Conakry, and close enough to the country's border with Mali. So it's really close to the border of Mali and New Guinea. And geologists estimate again, it's about 20,000 years old, gauging this through the displacement of a rock fault. Now, there are caves in the area that the locals say contain old mummies that are jealously guarded by the locals, and they're supposedly of Atlanteans. So this figure does point towards the Atlantic Ocean. So they believe that this figure is representation of perhaps a goddess looking out towards Atlantis. The geologist bolstered his belief by means of an extraordinary object, a strange crystal found in Sierra Leone diamond fields, which resembled a pure turquoise, similar to some found on the pectorals of Egyptian priests. And just so you could see where it is again, this is the location we're talking about, and the statue faces the Atlantic. And
En dan vraag ik me eigenlijk af, als het beeld naar Atlantis wijst, waarom kunnen ze het niet vinden met de moderne technologie? Want het beeld dat wijst naar Atlantis. Of het staat niet op de kaart, of het is, dit is de V-kaart wat wij krijgen, of het staat wel op een kaart dat wij niet mogen zien. Dus dat is eigenlijk hoe ik het een beetje zie. En we gaan nu naar het derde filmpje. Dat gaat over precies hetzelfde onderwerp een beetje. Maar dan over dat er overal piramides te vinden zijn. Een mooi filmpje over hoe heet het ook alweer? Objecten die niet te plaatsen zijn in onze geschiedenisboekjes. Ik zal het filmpje nou even starten. Ja.
3,000 pieces which have no logical explanation. Many of these pieces are from secret private collections. Thank you. Got two. And I guess other museums as well that Klaus has had access to. So far, the exhibition has been staged in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and South Korea. One day we hope to get him down here to Australia, and you'll be reading about it in Nexus when we organise that. Among the exhibition pieces are a Nephilim giant bones, which give a different take on the history of humanity and suggests the possibility of extraterrestrial influence. Other items that have piqued Klaus's interest include ancient model aircraft from Egypt and Colombia, 2,000-year-old electrical batteries found in Iraq, precision glass lenses dug up from Viking graves, and there's a whole list of them here, but Klaus has got hundreds of photos here and pictures of what he's picked up on his collection around the world. Klaus firmly believes we are not alone and never have been. The physical evidence he shows has radical implications for how we look at human history. His territory covers Atlantis, reptilian humanoids, the Anunnaki, ancient science and symbolism, a global language and more. This is Klaus's first appearance at a Nexus conference. I gather it's his first time in Australia.
Yes.
So please give him a big warm Nexus conference welcome. Klaus Stoner, thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to congratulate and say thanks to Duncan and his group, his staff, because they invited me and made me able to talk to you, and the organization is just perfect. Thank you very much, Duncan. First of all, shortly, I would like to inform you how I came to do to this researches. Since 20 years, I'm planning and organizing cultural exhibitions from Austria to Japan. And you can imagine how many times I was in an airplane between Austria and Japan. And in the airplane and through jet lag in Japan, I read many books from Deniken, Robert Charroux, and many other writers. And believe me, I was the one who did not believe that all these pieces are existing and they are all original. Then I had the naive idea it would be the easiest thing to bring all or some of those pieces to Vienna into an exhibition called Unsolved Mysteries, and then the scientists have a chance to prove that those artifacts are not original and old. And it put me really into hell, because I found some researchers, some scientists, they did checkings on some of those pieces, and they found out that we would not be able to do the same pieces from the same material in our days, and we could not prove that one of those artifacts was new made. So all of you, you know the legends and stories, old stories, talking about giants, about Atlantis, about Mu, and many other things. I found out in the last several years that many of the legends have a big portion of reality. For example, and of course I would like to say that I cannot give you shocking informations like Donna and Jim this morning, but I can only leave you with open questions. Maybe you have some own ideas, and I start with the pyramids, because you can find pyramids all over the world. I start with the pyramids of Giza. Everybody of you know them. I show you the Sun Pyramid in Teotihuacan in Mexico, 60 kilometers north of Mexico. This is a model of the pyramid area, which was in former days. This is a pyramid in China, another one in China, another one in China. And the next pyramids, we got photos from a Chinese archaeologist from southern Mongolia, a very strange form of pyramids. And a few weeks ago, I got information from China about a private collection which the owner got from his great-grandfather, and he found it in southern Mongolia, around the area where you saw the pyramids. The official dating of the pyramids in southern Mongolia is between 5,000 and 8,000 years. So those artifacts must be at least older than 5,000 years, but I think they are very much older. And you see here one artifact. It's a bronze statue found in southern Mongolia, and it looks definitely like the Egyptian goddess Isis. Here you have the details, and you can see here the horns and what the archaeologists call it the sun. But several researchers, for example, a Russian researcher, Professor Muldashev, he did many researches in Tibet, Egypt, and many other countries. He thinks that this ball is not showing the sun, but he calls it shows the prana, or the kind of orb which is energy, pure energy. Here you have some photos of Egyptian Isis, and you can see that the piece from southern Mongolia is very similar. And the next following artifacts are made out of jade, very hard jade material, and very strange artifacts. It is not known what culture did those pieces and when, but they think about 5,000 to 8,000 years ago. The next pyramid is from Canarian Island, another one Canarian Island, and another one. Then you can see some pyramids from Greece. This one is in Hellenikon in Greece. The next one is from Italy, from Sicily, Italy, from Sardinia in Italy, and the next photo shows how they restored it. This is a very old drawing from Tahiti, from a pyramid. I do not think that it exists in our days. The next one is from Mauritius Island. These two pyramids are from Taiwan. And even in Austria, we have a pyramid of stones. So you can see pyramids, you can find them all over the world. And I think also there was a writing existing, the same writing all over the earth, which I show you other photos following. So I think the pyramids, they had a connection somehow, and they were not all, or only some of them were really graves. I think that they had other functions, but still the scientists do not have a real answer. This photo, I put it on because I did not know that Duncan with his magazine is much faster than I. He did a very good report about stone buildings in South Africa in his last Nexus magazine. So you can find, I don't have to talk a lot, you can read a real good explanation in the June-July Nexus magazine. An African owner of a fire protection company, he owns several helicopters and small airplanes for protection the fire. And he was flying over South Africa the last 20 years. And he did thousands of photos. He found thousands of stone circles all over South Africa. And the official archaeological explanation is that those stone circles were cow storages. But look at these pictures, and do you really think that those were cow storages? I don't think so, because they are exactly archaeoastronomical places or works. And I had a telephone call last week with the second finder, Michael Tellinger, and he told me that they did research with high-tech instruments inside of some of the stone circles, and they produce a sound of 14.5 gigahertz with 72 decibel, and they are quite sure that these sounds are producing a kind of energy. Another stone circle, another one. And if you look, they are mostly closed, and they have a very near connection to the stone buildings in Zimbabwe. They also informed me that they found gold mines older than around 40,000 years in South Africa. They also found a so-called Adam's calendar because it's an astronomical site with stones. And you can see here the winter solstice sunset on 21st of June 2006. And here the sun is exactly on top of the larger stone. And Michael told me that they are doing now researches on these two mountains, and there is a third one, he told me, which is not visible on this photo, and they are exactly located like the Great Three Pyramids in Egypt and have a connection to the Orion. And he thinks that those mountains are pyramids, but they have to start with diggings and research. They also found a few years ago in Bosnia, in Europe, two big mountains. They existed for long times, and they had the scale of two pyramids, and they did some excavations, and they found out that those two mountains were in former days pyramids, and one of them is bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The government of Bosnia prohibited last year the further excavations. Here you have the picture of the Adam's calendar and some more stone circles, but as I told you, Nexus magazine has several pages with the detailed information about them. Here, this one I got from Russia. They did an excavation close to Chernobyl. The area there is called Arkaim. It's a military restricted area, and they found also very big stone monuments, which shows that in former days they had villages but built in circle forms. And again, another photo from Arkaim, Russia, which shows a quite similar stone circle like in South Africa. In May, I was invited by a private research group to Sardinia in Italy. And on Sardinia, there existed about 8,000 stone monuments called nurages. The nurages are explained by the Italian archaeologists as protection towers. But for anybody who has a little bit military knowledge knows that how can you build a defense, one entrance and no window? How can you really protect yourself? Because if an enemy wants to kill you, he just put fire on the entrance and waits until you have to get out. And this private researching group did the last 10 years research on certain days, on certain hours, especially on the winter changement, on the equinoctial lines and everything, and they definitely have the approval that those towers were archaeoastronomical towers. This is one inside photo, and one of the towers has a small, like a small window on top, and only on certain day of the year, the sun presents the bull's head on the center of the nurage. And the bull's head was a northern star before the Great Flood, or let's say pre-Diluvian, around 10 to 12,000 years ago. The age dating of those towers officially is about 2,000 to 3,000 years. But this group and many other persons believe that they are much, much older, that they are pre-Diluvian time, older than 10,000 years. And how can you make a dating on stone buildings? If you find a ceramic, you can date it because it's organic material. But who tells us if there were not thousands of years later people just using those nurages for living or for overnight or for protection of heavy rain or something like this. So it doesn't say if you find in an old stone monument an artifact that this artifact is exactly the age of the piece you found. Here you have the drawing of the biggest nurage, and here on this side you have small small windows. They are that deep and they are very small. So even for protection, how can you protect your enemies if you have to bow down? You only can hit him with an arrow, mainly in his feet. That means it wouldn't help a lot. And this group found out that exactly on the equinoctial terms, the sun rise comes in here and goes out here. And if they followed this in about 500 meters, you have another nurage, another 500 meters, another. So they are all connected. And I already informed them if they might be able to do some research with high-tech inside, because I think that also these nurages produce a kind of a sound or energy. And another strange story is that, like the legions of the giants, which we find also all over the world, every country, every tribe worldwide has the legends about the giants. And in Sardinia, there is the legend of the giants, and they find, and there are many, many of very big stone graves, and they all have the form of the bull's head. And they say, so old people, I met some very old gentlemen there, and they said that when they were young, Italian archaeologists excavated giants with over 3 meters, and they took the bones with them. But if you ask anybody officially, giants in Sardinia never existed. They built also in very hard stone, they built rooms going back from first to second to third, even to the fourth room with very small entrances. And this is the picture of a so-called giant grave. It's very big, and on the left side and right side you have the form of the horns, and on the back side the head of the bull. Very interesting also that they found even giant graves under the sea level. That means from a time where the sea was much deeper than in our days. This is a picture, a photo from Bimini Bimini. They found very big hand-worked stones, a lot of them, and as Edgar Casey said, around Bimini they might find a pyramid from Atlantis. This one and the next photo was done by a Russian research ship. They found pyramid form constructions in 700-meter deepness. And now we are going to Yonaguni. Yonaguni is the southest island in Japan. And Professor Masaaki Kimura is doing researches since 1985. And the first what they found through a professional diver was a very big monument. You have here the drawing, how it looks. And until now, Professor Kimura has problems of the acceptance of this stone monument done by human, because the official archaeologists say it is natural. And he said, why it is natural? They said because the stairs are too big for normal humans, so that couldn't be made by human for human. But again, we have even in Japan the stories of giants. Maybe the people at those times were much taller than in our time. Here you have several pictures like this one in the center. It looks like a head, he calls it the Japanese Sphinx. But here you can see the huge work of a turtle. And there is a second one there of a big eagle or a very big bird. I mean, the nature makes many things, but I do not think that the nature can do a pyramid, can do a turtle and a big eagle. And a few months ago, Professor Kimura informed me that he even found a stadium with seat rows and stairs going up. I know that the nature can do a lot, but not a stadium like the Colosseum in Rome. Here you see how big and how perfect done is this monument. And most of all, if it's natural and the stone was broken down here, where are the stones? There are no stones close to this monument. Here, everybody of you know already the Piri-Reis map. Here you see how perfect it was. And that's the so-called World Stone Map. We found it in the year 2000 in a private collection with other 350 pieces which do not have any connection to any existing or known South American culture. This stone and the other artifacts were found in the year 1984 by engineer Sotomayor, while he was in charge for gold digging for a British mining company. He found a tunnel system, and in there were those 350 pieces. This stone is about 350 kilos in weight. It's granite, and it has a natural quartz line, which you see here, but all the other things are encarved. And for example, it starts here on this side. You can see that there is an eye inlay. This is the area of approximately Israel or the Near East. From here, you can see Italy, Greek. The quartz line, the natural quartz line, goes over the Mediterranean, enters here into the Atlantic Ocean, and here you have one continent which does not exist in our days, and I think this shows Atlantis. Then it enters into South America, and here is another, this is the Bay of Guayaquil in our days, and here you have another inlay and another one going up, and here is a circle inlay, and that's exactly the place where all those pieces were found. This is also the place where we found the best water which exists on our Earth, because it has an energy, natural energy, up to 1.5 million Bovis. Bovis was a French researcher. And the strongest water in Europe is the well of Fatima, which has 640,000 Bovis. But this water in Ecuador has 1.5 million Bovis, and it has silver and gold colloidal in nanomicroscopical form. So that means the silver and gold colloidal can go directly into the human cell. There are many legends that the kings were searching the water of life, and even we had some translations of Sumerian plates, and the translation was the gods were searching the water with gold. And I asked myself many times, why here, around this area where the Sumera were living, you have an inlay of an eye and then showing exactly the place where this water is. And there is another continent here on this map here, that's next to Asia. That's from the northeast Japanese island down further than Taiwan. And Professor Kimura told me, and he wrote also a book about the sunken continent Mu, that he thinks, because of his research, that from the northeast island of Japan, now Russia, until far under Taiwan, there once existed a long continent, and you have it here. And that means that this stone map should be at least older than 10,000 years. But then the big question, how could somebody make such a perfect map already 10,000 or more years before our time? This is a close-up. You can see here Iraq, Saudi Arabia, the Mediterranean, and the eye inlay, the long continent here, and this eye. And here again, the line coming down here, and the inlay where the pieces were found, here where the circle is. This is the so-called pyramid with the shining eye. Even Jim used it for his new bestseller. So it means it is a very, very famous, but also very, very old symbol. And this is the only existing really pyramid with the eye. It has exactly 13 steps, like the pyramid on the $1. And very strange, our exhibition where I showed this pyramid in original in Vienna, the opening was on 21st of June 2001. And this crop circle appeared in Eastfield in England on the 21st of June 2001. And the next circle, the pyramid with the eye, was showing on 21st of July 2002 in Bacon Hill. It's the pyramid with the eye and the 33 lines. 33, 7, 9, 13. Always in my research, I find these numbers. The strange thing with this one and other artifacts found in Ecuador, that if you put black light on it, the eye shines really very, very strong. And the natural color is kind of light green and gray. And the most impressive for me was that on the bottom of the pyramid, you have here in gold inlays the Orion constellation and an unknown writing. This unknown writing we found on stone.
And that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge.
Able to translate this language, Professor Kurt Schildmann, he was the president of the German Linguistic Association. He spoke and wrote more than 40 languages perfect, and he could translate this writing, and he called it pre-Sanskrit because it's older than the oldest writing. And the translation of these 4 letters on the bottom of the pyramid was "the Son of the Creator comes." And when an American professor with his Tuareg friend from Northern Africa, Tuareg, was watching this picture on Project Camelot interview, he was contacting me, and he was informing me that his Tuareg friend was shocked when he saw this writing, because he said it looks like our former writing, and one sentence he could translate, that was "son." And the Tuaregs are on the research of Professor Marcel Homais. He was a famous French archaeologist, and he was writing a book, and he was writing that the Tuaregs, on his research, had a connection to the sunken continent Atlantis. And even if you read the Bible, there is the sentence, until the building of the Tower of Babel, the whole humans spoke one language. And we found definitely stones with the same writing all over the world on different continents. And for example, the stones from Glocel, France, they were found already in 1924. So who could have been able to make stones before 1924 and bring them from South America to North America, even to Australia, in the hope that one day archaeologists find it and they break their brain, what could it be? Here you have one artifact from the same place showing how to hold the pyramid. You see here the two eyes, you see the right hand, on the right hand the pyramid, and on top of the pyramid the left hand. On the next stone you see a man sitting on a stone, holding the pyramid, having something flat like a helmet on his head, with a kind like antenna going up to this object. From his eyes, rays are going out, and here you can see two both men or people. And here is the helmet, a flat metal helmet, and here you can see that something was broken away. Maybe this was this helmet, and this antenna was not found there. Another strange artifact is this big cup with 12 little cups. On the big cup you have a perfect star constellations, and we did research with a computer program, astronomical program, and we found two ages fitting these star constellation. One was about 12,000 years ago, and the other one was 0, meaning starting of our 2010 years calendar. So if I would like to talk a funny story, I would say maybe this could be the Graal, but who knows? 12 little cups, one big cup. The big one is inside very magnetical, outside nearly nothing. And I talked with many geologists, they said it is impossible. If the stone includes iron material, it must be the same magnetically from both sides. This cup is not. And here you see the perfect star constellation with Orion, Pleiadian, Betelgeuse. And these three big stars are building a perfect pyramid. And also the inlays of the stars are shining very strong if you put black light on it. Here you have small cups, and you can see the numbers. They are looking like the Mayan numbers, but they are different, a little bit different. This is a stone plate with the same star constellation with two figurines, both looking up, and also the eyes and the star constellation is shining under black light, very strong and lightly. This is damaged here. It had the form of a heart. And if you look here, you can see the closed eyes, the nose, the mouth, the long bird, and the long hair, here damaged also. Geologists explained me the nature does not change the color in a stone perfectly on one place from brown to black, so there is no explanation how this black color could have been made. And if you look very sharp to this face, many of my friends, when they saw first time this picture, they said it looks like the Shroud of Turin. So now we have an inlay in Israel, we have a big cup, we have 12 little cups, and we have a hard stone with a face which looks like the Shroud of Turin. Of course, it could not be the Graal, because those pieces must be older or the same age like the world map. That means that they might be older than 10,000 years. Of course, those artifacts are not accepted by the official archaeologists in Ecuador, because, as I said, they do not have any connection to any accepted or researched pre-Columbian culture in South America, especially this cobra head. The cobra never existed in South America, and on the underside of the cobra head you have 7 points here, and you have again here 33 markings. Again here we have the 7 and 33. Also shining very strong under black light. And this is a so-called Kundalini stone. You see here the sexual energy is going on the backbone up to the third eye. Kundalini never existed in any pre-Columbian culture. It comes from Asia. Dolphin must have been also a very important animal in the past in other civilizations, because this is a perfect done dolphin head. Also the inlays, very strong, shining under black light. This is a so-called stone helmet or a stone ball. You can put it on your shoulders, or you can lay it down and put your head inside. And when we had the exhibition in Vienna, some acupuncture doctors told me that the inlays here are exactly the points, the energy points they are using for the acupuncture. Acupuncture also does not exist in former pre-Columbian cultures. Here you can see how you can use it, or you can lay it down and put your head inside. And a few months ago, they found in this area an unfinished even, a spiral, also shining under black light, very strong. And here again, a jade plate with 7 rows, perfect done, which is even not easy in our days. And also when you put it under black light, it's shining very strong. Then there is a stone pyramidal form with the pyramid with the eye and many strange symbols, and some of them I found in the book from Churchward, The Sunken Continent Mu. He did a lot of research on Mu and Atlantis, and some of the symbols, unknown symbols on this pyramidal stone we found also in his book. Another pyramidal stone, another one, always the pyramid with the eye. And also in Churchward's book about the sunken continent Mu, you can find the pyramid with the eye. So that means it's not only the symbol of the Knight Templars, or later on from the Masonics, or even now on the $1 US. The pyramid with the eye must have been a very, very important, powerful symbol. They found also many ceramic figurines there, and you can see, if you look at this picture, you would never think that this was found in South America. Most probably you would think this is an Asian culture. Here presented the third eye. Very strange. I mean, they have no really connection to any known existing culture, pre-Columbian culture. From Ecuador, we are moving to Bolivia. This is a photo of the Altiplano in Bolivia, where they found many, many black artifacts from an unknown civilization. Dating is at least older than 4,000 years. You have also near Tiahuanaco, you have Pumapunku, where you have hundreds of stone plates, perfect worked on, with 10, 20, 30 tons. But the work is done very precise and very perfect. Nobody knows what was the reason and for what did they do it, and especially how did they do it. This is the famous Sun Gate, where Poznański, a German, living in Bolivia at the beginning of the 20th century, he was doing research more than 30 years on Pumapunku and Tiahuanaco, and also on the Sun Gate, and he found out that the Sun Gate is ident with the Venus calendar. Look at this work. How could they do such a precise work on thousands of tons heavy stones with primitive tiles? I don't think that's really possible. The next 2 pictures are satellite pictures from Salar de Uyuni. Salar de Uyuni is the world's largest salt lake, pure salt, in Bolivia, in the height of 3,800 meters. you can see on this photo and also on the next photo that in the salt there are building forms. That means that in the salt, in former days, before there was water, before it was changed to salt, that there were living people there. But now I have always three questions. How comes pure salt water up to 3,800 meters? How long does it take until salt water changes into pure salt? Because in 3,800 meters, the temperature is in the night very cold, and on daytime, it is not really hot. And third question is, how old must those buildings be? I think we talking at least more than 10, 15, 20,000 years. And that shows us, and that was what I found out, and what is my opinion, that we had several times global catastrophes on our Earth. In this area, they found also 2.5, 2.6 meter skeletons from humans, but they were always bigger than 2.5, 2.6 meters. And you can see that the jaw is much stronger than our jaw. And the most strange thing is that those skeletons, those skulls, do not have any bone plate connection, because we, the Homo sapiens, we have 3 bone plates and the fontanella. And when the baby is born, the fontanella is very soft, and after growing up, the fontanella closes. These skulls do not have the 3 bone plates. And it's not a single skeleton, there were several of them. That means we have here definitely a different human, like the Homo sapiens or Neanderthal or any known human. But unfortunately, those skeletons are deep in the jungle, and only the photos I received through Bolivian friends, and we have the approval and the agreement with the military. When we are flying there, they will bring us to the skeletons, and then I have the chance to bring at least 1 bone with me, and we can try to do an age dating and a DNA dating. These masks were found in the area of the skeletons, and when I presented these masks in Vienna 2001, I was wondering, because I thought how they can make so wonderful, beautiful masks, but you cannot look through both eyes. You have to look either through the right one or the left one, because at that time I didn't know that those people in this area were over 2.5 meters. And of course, if you are
and that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge
would fit perfect those masks. That's another mask. And another one, very strange symbols on it. And always a snake. On this figurine, you have on top and on the reverse side, you have the snake. And that's one of the animals we find always on very old, unknown artifacts. So that means that the snake must have been a very big importance in the past. In our days, as I heard, in Australia you have a lot of very poisonous snakes. This is a stone pan flute. And you can see here where it is damaged, that inside the stone is brown, but only the surface is very black like lacquer. And we do not know how they could do this. And the holes are very precise done. And we asked a Bolivian pan flute player in Vienna to make us some sound samples. And I asked also 2 professors to join us to check the kind of sound. And it took him nearly half an hour until he got the first sounds out of it. And later on, we found out that every 2 holes are perfectly connected on the bottom. And when he brought out the sounds, and we did a check on it, this sound does not connect any known sound. I don't know how you call it. Do, re, mi, fa, fa. Yeah, it does not fit any. One tone was high, deep, very deep, middle, very high. But we found out that these tones have a connection with the brain waves. So I think they might have been used either for meditation or for healing. This is like a boat with 3 holes, and this is very small, and when he tried with the same force, power, to get out sounds of this small flute, it didn't work, and when he used it very soft, we got the same sound like the dolphin sound. Now we are going to Colombia. This is the so-called genetical or embryological disc. I have here the perfect replica of the original, and I leave it later on here on the stage in the break, so you can check it by yourself. This material, we did material check in Vienna. It is lyddite. Lyddite is a very hard stone. It is nearly the same hardness like granite, but it is formed like leaves in the structure. So it would not be able for us in our days to do this and the following artifacts from the same material, because it's just impossible. We did a material check in Vienna, and also the most famous or the most perfect expert did a check on the plate and on the other material, and he told me afterwards, I cannot tell you how they did it, when they did it, and how old it is, but one thing I can tell you definitely, from the same material, we are not able in our days to do the same artifacts. But the strange thing on this genetical disc is that you have things on it which we only are able to see with microscope. For example, here you have the human egg with spermia inside and without spermia. You have here the spermias. You have on the reverse side, here you can see the comparison of a microscope photo inside a lady of the human eggs. And on the reverse side, you have different kind of fetus, but you have here male, female, and on the other side, male, female, and child. And Professor Gutierrez, the Colombian owner of this collection, he thinks that this disc shows the transformation from frog to human, which I do not really agree. But it is very strange that how were they able to do this piece and the other following pieces from this material, where we would not be able to do it in our days? And why did they show the face so big with round eyes? Why didn't they show how they really looked? Or the other question is, did they really look like they presented themselves here? This we cannot approve. This is a knife, and it's the same material, lyddite, and you have here the mother's head and the baby, and the bone line is around the neck of the baby, and here you have an arrow going down. That means it shows for what to use. If the line is strangling the baby, they should use this knife to cut the line. This we call birth help spoon. It is this size, and you have here the mother's head, the vagina and the baby's head coming out. And on the reverse side, you only can put precisely this finger inside, and then you can hold it only with your 2 fingers. And in Vienna, some doctors were checking this piece, and they told me it would be even safer than our instruments when the baby doesn't come out to help it, because with this instrument it would not be able to damage the baby's head, because you cannot use power, because you only can use the 3 finger. So that means you really could help to get the baby out, but you could not damage the baby's head. And this is the same material. That means the luddite, the structure is like leaves. So it would not be possible today to make this form in the same material. So that's why he guaranteed that luddite, the same pieces, and this piece is about this size, it would not be able for us to make it. Also these pieces. And if you see here, each piece is done in perfect style. And here you can see how they were holding those pieces. This you know from Easter Island, but this is a very small one found in the Colombian jungle. Looks like the Maui on the Easter Island. Now we are jumping to Guinea-Conakry, Western Africa. Professor Pittoni, an Italian geologist, gave me those photos, this one and the next one, and you can see here a lady's head, the breast until here. It is granite, very hard. It is in the mountain, and it is definitely not natural made, because you can see here the face. And the size from here to here is 150 meters. And the face is definitely not black African. Some skull experts did a measurement and everything, and they said it's either Asian or South American. Now we are going to Sierra Leone. The same Professor Pittoni, he was working for the Italian government in diamond mines, and there was a legend that Allah, they are Muslims there, Allah was angry to some of his angels, and he made them to stone, and he threw them to earth. He put the sky, concentrated the sky and threw it to the earth, and he put the stars, he took the stars and he threw the stars also to earth. And that means this is a so-called sky stone. We call it sky stone because they found stones in various sizes, very blue, like really sky blue. And we did a research, material research in Vienna. It is an artificial stone. It is not natural. We could find out all the materials, the ingredients, but what the scientists could not find out was the color. How could they make it that blue? And another thing, Barcelona University found out that some of those stones includes up to 13%. We call it iridium, I think in English iridium. This is a material which does not exist on our Earth, but we can find it on impact places. This is one of the nomolis, so-called, the stone-changed angels. Here you have another one, granite, very heavy, nearly half a meter in size. You have an elephant and you have a big man sitting on it. That means even in Africa, every tribe has the legions of the giants. But then, very strange, you have other pieces, half human body with some reptile face. And this is the oldest one. The other stones, always when Professor Pittoni, while they were digging for diamonds, found one of those statues, he always took some organic material from the finding place and he did always an age dating. The youngest one was about 2,500 years and the oldest one was this one. He found it in around 50-meter deepness, and It looks like a kind of dinosaurs, and inside this figurine was a small metal ball. And when I got these pieces for the exhibition in Vienna, I brought the statue and also the metal ball to the Natural Historical Museum for research, material research. Next morning, the professor called me and she said, "Mr. Donner, I think somebody did a bad joke on you." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I did a material check on the small metal ball, and you know what it is? Chromatical steel. And I know that chromatical steel was found by an Austrian 1904. So I thought, oh, somebody really did a bad joke, but I don't believe that Professor Pitoni makes a joke on me. So I called him immediately and I said, "Professor, we have a big problem. We did a material check on the metal ball." He said, "Oh yeah, what is it?" I said, "Chromatical steel, Professor." He said, "Wow, that's sensational." I said, No, but it's a modern piece because chromatical steel, 1904, by an Austrian. So he was laughing and he said, "Klaus, what do you think? I open a stone, a 17,000 years old stone statue because it makes a strange sound?" No, it did make a strange sound. So I was thinking, I was wondering what is inside, because there is no opening at the mouth, and this place was closed completely, so he couldn't see that there was a hole in former time. So he did X-ray from all the sides, and he sent me then the X-rays, which proved that the statue was closed when he found it, and the metal ball was inside. 17,000 years approximately, chromatical steel. So the big question, how those people would have been able to make chromatical steel. Now we go to the question, did human exist together with dinosaurs? Because in Texas, in the Biloxi River, when it was very, very dry, they found dinosaur steps and human footsteps. So of course, as you can believe, the official archaeologists and the anthropologists said that the creationists did do that to make a big sensation. So it was proved that this was not done in our days. It was old, and several years later, it was another very dry season, and they broke away part of this plate, and under this plate was a second plate, again with dinosaurs and human footsteps. In Bolivia, they found 3 years ago an old stone with a perfect human footprint, and the age of this stone is approximately 15 million years. This is
and that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge
place artifact, the hammer of Texas. We had this hammer in Vienna and also in Berlin in the exhibition, and I got the approval from Dr. Bo, the director of the Creation Evidence Museum, to do a very, very good research on this hammer and on the stone at the Fresenius Institute in Germany, which is the best material checking institution in Europe. And I have to say, 60% the hammer is not 14 million years old, because they found out that the wood is not petrified. But they found out that the metal is a very strange combination, and they found out that this piece and the second piece, the top piece, is the same material, because many of the archaeologists and anthropologists said that they would have put the hammer inside the stone. No, the stone was inside, the hammer was inside the stone. But one other thing, there's a last check necessary, because in the second stone is a muscle inside, a shell. Thank you. There's a shell inside, and if we can prove that this is a seashell, then the hammer is really that old. But if it's from clear water, then it would prove that the hammer is young. So next time when I get the hammer, we try to do the last check. Until now, I have to say 60% this artifact is not that old as presented until our days. This is another thing. It's a stone plate. It's a positive and negative of one footstep, like a shoe step. And inside is a trilobite, crashed through the weight. But trilobites, they are not existing since at least 230, 300 million years. This metal pot was found in United States inside a big stone coal block. And you can see that it was under heavy pressure because the coal definitely was going inside partly of this iron pot. But the coal in this area where this metal pot was found is at least geological dating 65 million years. And it ident with many pieces Michael Cremo wrote in his book Forbidden Archaeology. So I personally also think that human's age is much, much older than we know until now. And here we have other very interesting artifacts from Peru, Ica. This is Professor Cabrera. He was a doctor in Ica, a small village close to the Nazca lines. And he collected the last 40 years more than 12,000 stones within carvings, and also thousands of terracotta figurines showing dinosaurs with human, showing heart transplantations, brain operations, and many other things. I have to say I was 3 times there, also with a geological scientist. We did the checking on many of the stones, and I have to say the majority of the stones, especially the very strange ones, they are really very, very old. But Professor Dr. Cabrera had also many new made stones in his collection. He was very fanatic. So I think at the time when he couldn't get new artifacts, he really ordered a man to do some new stones, and it's pity. But that sometimes happens. So I have to say definitely the majority of his artifacts, they are really old, very old, some of them probably millions of years, but he passed away, he had also some new done in his collection. Here you can see the dinosaurs with human, dinosaurs with a fish, a man looking up to the stars. Here you have a kind of pyramid, very interesting. We checked very carefully this stone, and the patina is really very old. This map is also very, very old, very heavy, a very big stone. And here you have some terracottas from his secret chamber. He called it secret chamber. Dinosaurs with human. Here you have stomach operation. And these 2 shells are showing really faces. I mean, very strange shells. He kept them also as some very special artifacts. Now we are going to Mexico, to Acámbaro. Acámbaro is about 3 hours by car west of Mexico City. There was a German living from around 1920 up to 1945, and they found on one mountain over 35,000 terracotta pieces, with many of them showing really dinosaurs. And Hapgood did research on it, and 2 other American researchers did age datings in America, and those pieces are between 2,000 and 6,000 years old. So there is the big question, how could those people know how dinosaurs are looking like. This is another very interesting piece, because if you look at this piece, you think this is an Egyptian artifact. It is not. It is also from the same place, from Akambaro. Also this one. And they really had more than 35,000 pieces. And all those pieces are still not accepted by the Mexican government as originals. Even there are really existing age datings between 2,000 and 6,000 years. Why they cannot be accepted? Because people could not have known even 2,000 or 6,000 years ago how dinosaurs are looking like. This is a drawing of the so-called Burrs Cave in Illinois, in United States, done by Russell Burroughs, who found in the early 1980s an underground tunnel system, and he brought out thousands of stones with end carvings with an unknown writing, the one I showed you on the bottom of the pyramid with the eye. And he also wrote a book. He explained that there are sarcophagus, pure gold inside, that there are mummies looking like Egyptian, that there are big overman-sized statues with diamonds and precious stones and everything. So he brought some of the stones to some museums, and they all told him those are frauds, new done. So then he started to sell stones. And even he found a lot of gold objects, and he and two of his friends were melting this gold. And we found out, especially Luc Bergin, a Swiss journalist, he found out that there exists in Switzerland a bank account on the name of Russell Burroughs and his two partners, 3 men. 2 of them died, and so Russell Burroughs cannot take the money out by himself, and there are $5 million US. So how can he make $5 million US with just stone frauds? So it's reality that he really found a lot of gold. Then he wanted to show this place to Wayne May, the publisher of an archaeological magazine called Ancient America, and he told him he will show the place if he pays him $10,000. So he said, okay, show me the place. And when they were around the area, Russell Burroughs said, no, I decided I don't show you the place. So Wayne May knew approximately where this area is, and he called ground penetrate radar specialists, and they did a research. And if you see here, you see here the statues, you see the gold sarcophagus, which he wrought by himself, Russell Burroughs. And here you have gold detections, the sarcophagus. You have also statues here, and the whole system is much bigger than even he discovered yet. So that means Wayne May is now trying to find an entrance to prove that this underground tunnel system with gold sarcophagus really existed. And here I show you some of these stones, always with the same writing here, but with strange humans on them. Here like an Egyptian, the same writing. This is like the Greek Alpha, and also the strange writing. This could be Tanis, the goddess of the Middle East, and the unknown writing. Also these marble plates he sold, he brought out of this tunnel and he sold it. And this symbol and that one I found also in the book from Churchward, The Sunken Continent Mu. Here you have an Egyptian goddess that again looks like Egyptian, but always this so-called pre-Sanskrit. This is a Ushapti found in United States on another place, in a mound building in an old former mound grave. So I got the information from Rex Gilroy that he also found a broken pyramid and some hieroglyphs in Australia, and I believe him, because if this civilization could even go to United States, why they couldn't have been able to come to Australia? That's another small stone plate, again found on another place while ground working by a farmer, and it shows also typical and 100% Egyptian goddess. Then another place, Utah, Mr. Bowers found around 30 years ago a tunnel system, and inside the tunnel he found two mummies. The male was about 3 meters in size, with red hair and a red bark and a big sword and armors, and the lady was blonde and 2.7 meter, perfect mummies. And he brought out of this cave 60 stone cassettes with metal plates, with another, but sometimes very similar looking writing like the ones I showed you before on metal plates. 60 perfect done stone boxes with metal plates with unknown writings and drawings on it. This stone is from Colombia. It's very interesting because on one side you have the writings like the other one I showed.
Ja, heel interessant. Nu kun je zien dat er heel veel dingen worden geheim gehouden. Over ons ware geschiedenis, hoe het echt gegaan is, als ons, de Illuminati ons onder controle houden met valse geschiedenis. En valse dingen allemaal. Ja, ik ga een linkje plaatsen onder mijn filmpje over dit filmpje. Kun je het helemaal zien. En nu gaan we naar de pre-Adamites. Dat zijn deze wezens. Die long-headed skulls, zo weet ik hoe ze heten. Skulls of zoiets anders. Ja, coneheads worden ze ook wel eens genoemd. Hun ruïnes liggen ja, in Antarctica. Dat filmpje zal ik nou laten zien. Ja. Kijken of hij het doet. En doet het wel? Oké, ja. We gaan er gewoon voor. Ja, ik start hem nu. Ik hoop dat jullie genoten hebben van deze lange rit. En je spreekt me de volgende keer weer.